Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The translation of that message, it reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story as anonymous? My brother, so I came to South Africa. It was in the year 2008. Life had been so hard for me. We could go for days and days without eating anything. I still remember that in that year, that was when there was too much violence back in our own village. And most of us that were not connected, we could actually go into the forest so that we can get some fruits, and we were just living on fruits, mainly your fruits that can be found in the forest. My mother then spoke with me after she heard that in our village there was this other young man who had successfully gone to South Africa, and he had returned back with some groceries. She spoke with me and she said, "My son, we do not have anything for you to do in this village. Why don't you go and speak with him so that you can hear if he will be able to assist you so that he can get you to South Africa by the time that he will return back to South Africa." When we did this was in June. So I then went to that guy's place and I spoke with him. He told me the money that was needed so that I can go to South Africa. I returned back home. My mom, we could not afford that money. When I returned back home, I was really sad because I could not afford that money, and I knew that this was going to be a very big burden on my own parents. At that time, my mom, when I returned back from speaking with that guy, I knew that this was going to be a very big burden that I was going to place on my parents' shoulders, because my mom and my dad, they had sold all of their livestock, including the chickens. They only had one cow that was remaining. They said that if anything will go wrong, then we will sell this cow. I returned back home and I lied to my mom that the guy had said that he was no longer returning back to South Africa. But my mother, she later went and she spoke with that guy's parents, and they said that he had not said such a thing. In fact, the next day he was on his way returning back to South Africa. My mom came back and I told her that I was not willing to see her sell off her cow so that I can go to South Africa. When my mom came back, she asked me as to why I had lied to her. I told her that I didn't want her to sell off her livestock simply because she wanted me to go and seek for a better life in South Africa. But she said that if your ancestors are going to travel with you, if they are going to lead you, I am pretty sure that you will come back and buy me 20 more cows in place of this cow that I am about to sell. She then sold off that cow to that guy's parents, and after she had been given the money, I can say that my mom gave me all of that money. They only bought a bag of meal and some cooking oil from that money that she had gotten after she had sold off a cow. So when the day arrived for us to travel to South Africa, me and this guy, we traveled all the way to South Africa, and things were really hard. Me and this guy, we then started working on this other certain farm. Unfortunately, the owner of that farm, he seemed not to like me and he fired me. So I started going around just looking for any job that I could get until I met this other man. This man, he was also from Zim, and I wondered as to how he had made so much money here in South Africa. He said that he works with a certain traditional healer. So what he does is that he goes and collects some items from him from Zim. These were the items that we're using like to create your small boys. He said that if I was willing to do this, then I was going to make money. My brother, this was a season of happiness in my life, a season of plenty. I was able to provide a lot for my own parents back home. Me and that guy, we would regularly cross the Limpopo River, whilst we will be carrying a lot of ritualistic items, you name it, your lion skulls, your monkey skulls, a lot of stuff that we used to go and collect mainly in the national parks that were needed by the traditional healers, different traditional healers that were using all of these items to create your small boys. Later on, this guy that I was now operating with, he said that he wanted to return back home since he had made a lot of money. He wanted to open up a grocery store. So he bought a car where what he was doing was that he would come to Musina and he would buy some groceries and he would go with them and place them in his grocery store. But my brother, I then had the sad news that this guy, he had passed away because some of the money that he had used, it was magic money. So this magic money that he had been given by this other traditional healer, you were not supposed to invest in that money. What you were supposed to do is that whenever you are given this money, you are supposed to spend it. It doesn't matter if it is 1 million or if it is 1,000 rands. You have to spend it on a single day. When you wake up and when you see that there is money in your house, you are not supposed to keep it or to invest it. So this is what he had tried to do. He had tried to invest using that money that was called magic money. So he had suffered the consequences. When I heard this story, I also went to that traditional healer after I had some guys that I was working with, the guys that were from Mozambique, that were also going to Mozambique to collect some charms from their own country, then selling them off to some traditional healers that are here in South Africa. They then took me to that traditional healer who had helped that man whom I was working with, and by giving him the magic money that had later killed him off. And I was willing, my brother, at that time to take that money so that I can spend it in a day. If it meant that I had to spend it in a day, I was ready. Like, I was really young. All that I wanted was to enjoy life. I then went there, my brother, and I was given the magic money, but some of the rules I could not even understand them because of my age. I kept on saying yes, 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 I want the money, but some of the conditions was that never in my life was I supposed to set my eyes again on my mother. I was supposed to remain in this foreign country until the time when I would say, I do not want this money anymore. And the day that I would say that I do not want this money anymore, then all the wealth that I would have accumulated over the years, it was just going to vanish into thin air, and I was going to return back home without having anything. With my age, with my immaturity, I said, yes, I do not care if I am going to set my eyes again on my mother. I suffered so much when I was back home. It was time for me to enjoy my life just for a little while. I wanted to enjoy my life. In my mind, I had told myself that as I'll be hanging around a lot of rich people, there was one who was going to be raised by God, who was going to assist me with clean money. If there was one who was going to assist me by giving me clean money, then I was going to use that money to make an investment. Then I was going to take care of my mother. It was just a fantasy. So my brother, I was then given some charms. These charms that were given to me, all that I have to do was to place it underneath my pillow. These charms, it's not like they affect anyone that is not my relative. They only affect me because I sacrificed my own soul so that I can enjoy in this life and never to enjoy in the afterlife. With time, my brother, then my relatives, this was after I had spent many years without communicating with any of my relatives. It then happened that this was 2010 when the World Cup was around the corner. There was one uncle of mine who came here to South Africa. He was also working at one of the stadiums, and one of my friend, he had a tender there at the place where they were building those stadiums. So he went there because he wanted to check on the progress, and he wanted to see if his guys that he had given the subcontracts, if they were doing a proper job. So he said, come, let us go together and you can see what my guys are doing there. But God had other plans for me. When I arrived there, I then saw that my uncle was there. I tried to hide. I tried to run back into the car, but my uncle had already seen me. This was my mother's brother. He said, so you are still alive. So you have made so much money, yet your mother, the woman that gave birth to you, is suffering back home in the village. What do you think about it? Then my uncle took my numbers because I was ashamed. This guy that I was with, as rich as he was, but his money was clean. When he heard that I had abandoned my own mother, I was really humiliated and I was ashamed of myself. So I took my uncle's number and I started just joking around, and I said that I am going to call you. I ended up calling him because my friend kept on asking me if I was in communication again with my mother. That is how I started communicating with my mother again. I heard that my mother, she was really sick, and if there was no plan that was going to be made so that she can go and visit the doctors, certainly she was going to, how much evil you have become, but your mother is your mother. When I heard that my mother was suffering, and when I saw some pictures that had been sent to me on Facebook but by one of my uncle's child, those pictures, they really touched my heart. My mom had grown so thin. She was no longer that beautiful woman that she used to be. I really cried on that day. I then took some money, and when I took this money, my brother, when I was driving to where the bus station was, like at the place where the bus that used to go to Zim used to park, when I was going there, I clearly had people that were telling me that this thing that I was going to do, nothing good was going to come out of it. I had to remember the rules and I had to abide by the rules, otherwise things were going to go very bad for me. But I ignored. I said this was my mother. I had the means to assist her and I had to assist her. So I then went and I gave the bus driver a huge sum of money, and I told him that this money, there was someone that was going to wait at the bus station along the way, and he was supposed to give my little sister the money. My brother, just after my sister had been given the money, when she returned back home, they said that for a moment my mother transformed and she became more like a monkey. They said that on the bed where she was sleeping on, they saw her transforming and becoming a monkey. Then my mother passed away. When everyone saw that this is what had happened, and when they looked at the huge sum of money that I had sent from South Africa, they immediately realized that I was nothing but a ritualist. They then started telling me that they were going to visit a traditional healer, and I was supposed to be there to attend my mother's relative, otherwise they were going to do a go back to sender. But my brother, I was not willing to risk it to travel back to Zim because I didn't know if they were going to kill me or not. I then promised myself that I will never set my foot again back in my own country. Since that year, when my mother passed away in 2010, I have never returned back home. What pains me the most is that I can wake up in the morning and I can find out that there will be money in the room where I will be sleeping, and by the end of the day, all of that money, I have to spend it. I do not have to spend this money on meaningful things. I have to go around wasting that money. Usually this money, the way that it appears to me, it won't be $1 million. Usually it is around from 5 to 10,000, and I have to spend it all. I have to go around shopping. What I have done over the years is that I have gotten myself a lot of women that help me to spend this money, and these women, even though they know that this man, the way that he spends his money, it is very suspicious. One thing that I have learned about them is that they do not care. As long as I give them money, they do not care. Even if I say that today I want you and my other 2 girlfriends to be with me in my hotel room, these women, they don't care. All they care about is me giving them money. This money, where it comes from, I do not know exactly where it comes from, but usually when I wake up, this money will be underneath my pillow, or I can find it underneath my bed. This money, my brother, I always find it to be 5 or 10K, and when I go with these girls shopping, I do not shop for myself, for I do not care anymore if I wear expensive clothes or cheap clothes. But these women that I date, they care a lot about their own outward appearance. But what the traditional healer told me is that the money will never affect these women that I date. As long as I do not give this money to anyone that is related to me, I will suffer no consequences. Over the years, my relatives, they have tried to be in communication with me, but I just speak with them for a day. I used to be on Facebook quite a lot, but when I saw that a lot of people would come into communication with me via Facebook, I told myself that I have to delete my account. After deleting my account on Facebook, I then stopped being on social media. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our dear brothers. Your strange things do happen in this world. Would you want a life whereby when you wake up in the morning, you are given, you are saying 10K, but you have to spend that money before sunset, all of it, and you do not have to buy anything that is meaningful? I asked him what are the most items that he buys. He says your iPhones, your expensive laptops, your video games, your TVs, anything that is just meaningless and expensive. That is what I buy, or I go and I just enjoy myself at the most expensive hotels, because I know that tomorrow the money will be back again in my pocket. Strange things do happen in this world.